Hello and welcome to Pairs of Aces. My name's Adam Lemon. I am the Chief Analyst at DailyForex. And this is our second episode of Pairs of Aces podcast. And joining me today is Chris Lewis, otherwise known as the Trader Guy. And Chris has been writing for us and being a senior analyst at DailyForex for many years, more than 10 years. Welcome, Chris. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, Adam. Nice to talk to you again. And I
Likewise.
believe I've been with you. I want to say we're probably closer to 16 years now, like
Yeah.
at the very beginning.
I was
I think
I
there
was
was only
actually
one or
holding
two
off
of
on
us then.
the enormous number of 16 years. I thought
Yeah,
10 would be enough to.
it's kind of odd to have, for those of us that work in this field, it's odd to have a career at a distant place. I'm in the United States, as people can probably tell by my accent. You guys are on the other side of the world. Most
Yeah.
analysts, you know very well.
So we have a few things to talk about today, and I guess no conversation today would be complete without getting into precious metals,
Yes.
which we've kind of chuckled about a bit. Um, So for those of you who don't know, and probably most of you do, the hot thing in the market lately has been gold and silver and some other precious metals. And gold has been in just an incredible upwards trend for quite a long time. Um, and I just made a few stats that I'll note. Since November 2022, and this is less than 3 years ago, gold is up by 154%, silver is up by 180%. Year to date, silver is up by 70% and gold is up by 57%. And a few days ago, these numbers were even higher as both gold and silver were powering very strongly into long-term, well, actually all-time highs. And then it came crashing down just a few years ago with each gold and silver. They were different days. It was silver first. The moves were huge. They were like 6% drops in a day. And I was long. I'm a trend trader. I use a trailing stop. I ride the trend and I don't second guess when it's going to end. And I got knocked out according to the rules of the trend trading strategies I use. So I'm out of those trades. What do you think about it? Like I know you tend to be like a bit skeptical of trends. I get the impression.
It's not that I'm skeptical of trends. I'm skeptical of trends like this. So, full disclosure, when I started trading, I started in currencies. And as you know, currencies, when a trend starts, it can last 3 years, but they're not normally parabolic. You might have a jump here and there, but there's at least some rationality to it. So it makes me a little bit skittish when you start to see parabolic moves like we've seen. And I'm out too, but I'm out for a completely different reason. A couple Sundays ago, I was on a nature hike with my wife and a group of people. It was a part of a metro park that is normally closed to the public. It's got like an old pioneer graveyard type thing and an old
Right.
historical barn house, that type of thing. So we're walking along, and I heard three people all talking about how the next day, the Monday, they were all going to the bullion dealer to buy ounces of silver. Now, I was long silver at the time. That Monday, I closed all of my positions, took all of my profit, and I now actually own puts in silver related stocks. So we'll
Oh,
see how that
nice.
goes out. The only reason I did puts, I don't normally do options. They're dated, they're leaps, they're dated far out. But the only reason I did options is because I don't have a good way to get a grasp on how the market's going to behave when it's irrational. The only other time I've heard random people who are not traders, and these people obviously weren't traders, was right before the Bitcoin hitting 20,000 and collapsing. I remember hearing an old man
Yep.
next to me in a restaurant in the next booth talking about how he was going to put some money into this Bitcoin thing. The futures contract came out a day or two later. A day or two after that, I shorted it in the futures, made a ton of money really quick because it fell apart there. as a general rule, once you hear those things and you start seeing reports from places like Australia where they're lining up outside of gold dealers to buy ounces of gold, you're getting closer to the top than the bottom. I'm not saying that the trend's over, but what I am saying is all of the smart money is probably already out. I look at it now as a very dangerous place to live. I think we probably, we are seeing as we record this a little bit of a bounce in the gold and silver
Yeah, it was
markets.
coming up a little today. Yeah.
Yeah. But the question is like gold's going to have to deal with 4,200 and silver in the futures market is going to have to deal with 50.
Yeah.
I'm going to be watching those places, but I think the healthiest thing that we could see is sideways action for a while. If
Yeah.
it goes parabolic, then I'm only going to buy more puts because at that point in time, when the crash comes, it'll be spectacular. You're
Yeah.
starting to hear a lot of conspiracy theories on
Flying
X.
the silver bars to London in special planes. Yeah, I read about
Right,
that.
right. So once you start hearing that, it's like I've seen this movie before. A few years back, we had silver hit 50 and it just collapsed. Ironically, I actually knew one of the Hunt brothers. I knew
Oh,
Lamar
really?
Hunt. Yeah, not personally, but I knew him
Right.
peripherally because he bought a soccer team. They were having a draft.
Right.
I was invited to the draft. I got to talk to him about he and his brother and trying to corner the silver market. They lost a ton of money, but luckily they had a ton of oil. So and he had enough down the road. He had enough money to buy the Kansas City Chiefs and start the AFL, which became the AFC in the NFL. So he did okay. Nobody's shedding tears for him,
Yeah. Those were
but
the days of
he
crazy
almost
commodity
cornered the
prices.
entire market. That would have been insane. I want to say that was like the late 70s, late
That does,
70s, I
yeah,
think.
in 1980. I
Yeah,
don't know why. Yeah, I mean, you'd think it would be almost impossible to corner something as plentiful as silver,
right.
that's mined in so many different places. Um, but in my opinion, I suspect with this high volatility, the trend is probably over. And if we do get a fresh high, it'll probably come crashing right back
Yeah,
down again, like you said. So I'm out, and I'm not looking to get back in. So
no,
I think I would say the party's probably over for now. Maybe it'll start
right.
again a few
A
months
nice
down the
a
road.
nice correction, and then I'm all about it. But we haven't had it yet. We're
Yeah,
talking gold going back to, I mean, at least 3,800 for me, at
yeah,
least. So that was the measured move of there was an ascending triangle that we had been in for months. The measured
right.
move was 3,800. We sat there for a minute and then went
It's a beautiful
parabolic.
triangle. It was a beautiful
Yeah.
triangle.
Yeah, it was great because my analysis every day was we're in an ascending triangle. If we break it, we go to 3,800. I had to repeat myself for like a month. It took forever to break out of that triangle once it was obvious.
But
You know,
those are the best ones. You're
right.
repeating
Yeah.
yourself just when
Yeah.
no one's listening anymore. Yeah, it's finally going
Right.
to happen.
Exactly. So
So
yeah,
there's
I
another
think I think
party.
we've seen the
Sorry,
top.
go on,
So
Chris.
no, I was gonna say I think we've seen the top. And
Yeah,
if not,
agreed.
it's coming shortly thereafter.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. So there's another party that is still ongoing, arguably, the stock market, or more particularly the American stock market. Although there have been other stock markets hitting all-time highs, notably the Nikkei in Japan and the Kospi in Korea, and they had
Mhm.
some big moves earlier this week. But for me, the big story, like it almost always is the American stock market, which historically over time produces these great returns on the long side. You really have like a tailwind at your back if you're long of the Nasdaq or the S&P 500. And although it's come down a bit, we've had probably, well, maybe some bad numbers came in the last few days, but the earnings season in the US, it's earnings season where a lot of companies are reporting their earnings, and I think most of them have been a bit better than expected. So we have seen, we do keep seeing these fresh highs in the US stock market. The S&P 500 to date is up almost 14% just since January the 1st, like this calendar year. And full disclosure, I'm long of the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq. I use ETFs rather than futures, which have their own risks. But anyway, I'm it's a trade I'm hoping will run and run and run. Um, I want to ask you what you thought about that, but especially with regard to, the probably the main thing that can either boost or disrupt the stock market now is President Trump and his tariffs. I sound like, Mr.
I was
X
going
and
to
his
say,
cat or something.
when you said that, I thought you were just going to say Donald Trump and just leave it at that. You
The
know,
Donald,
there's
I could
never a
just
dull
say.
moment. Yeah, never a dull moment. What do I think? I think your biggest danger, ironically, is Donald Trump. Um, he proved that just a few days ago, talking about tariffing China, and we dumped pretty massively in the middle of the day. Um, but
It
I
was a
think,
Friday. It was a Friday.
yeah,
I
yeah,
suddenly looked at the prices at the end. And I thought, what the hell happened?
yeah. Yeah, I
Something's
just
happened.
assume I just assume, are we at war? Like just something happened. And then I saw his face in my news feed, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay, what'd he do? So I think that's your biggest danger. It's not the economy. Now, the economy in the United States is going through what they call a K-shaped recovery,
Hmm.
meaning that the lower half of the country isn't doing as well as the upper half. The upper half's doing quite well. Uh, I think the bullish stock market continues. That's not to say that we won't get an occasional sharp pullback, probably from Trump, but the reality is that the NASDAQ 100 is right around the 25,000 level
Yep.
and currently is struggling with it, but it's a large psychologically significant number. I remember when the Dow was struggling with 25,000. Same thing.
Yep.
Eventually we go higher. We are in the middle of earnings season. Somebody is going to knock it out of the park. As you know, the NASDAQ 100 is really the NASDAQ 7. So one of those companies will drag everybody else up with them. And that's what will be the cause of it. The actual forward looking indicators in the United States are all pretty positive.
Hmm.
It's a little hard to look at the stock market chart in a vacuum and go, oh, this is going much higher. But I think it is. I think we are getting ready to see a pretty significant move higher. The timing of it, that's an entirely different question, but I think we spend a little time here and then just go to the upside. I wouldn't get short by any stretch. I might buy puts for protection, but a longer term investor, a lot of times they'll do that anyways. Just buy a few puts, make sure that everything, in case we do get a 7% correction, I'm somewhat padded. I can ride through that. There's really nothing that I see. Uh, maybe tariffs, but I think that's kind of a long shot, truthfully, to be
Yeah.
anything that truly matters.
Yeah. They
Um,
they do seem to be very long shots. I mean, there's a little bit of speculation. There could be some kind of conflict with China at some point, or maybe Russia could do something in Europe. These seem kind of far-fetched. I mean, it doesn't feel to me like China's suddenly going to invade Taiwan, or that though the Russians were, I think they did do some overflying of NATO countries in
yeah,
Eastern Europe a couple of weeks ago. So, like you say, I mean, and even as Trump threatens, China, he also is very positive about getting a deal done, and we've only got 7 days to go. But you've got to think that everyone is pretty much expecting it. And like you say, and as you correctly pointed out, with just a few companies dominating the major US indices now, there is another risk of like really heavy volatility. Like if something happened to one or two of those companies
yeah,
that was really serious,
yes. If
it would have
Nvidia
such
came
a,
out,
yeah,
if Nvidia had some type of, I don't know, let's just speculate wildly here, some type of criminal investigation with Nvidia, the stock market would absolutely fall apart.
yeah,
Um, or some one of the other the bigger ones. It really would only take one having a disaster, and we've seen it from time to time. One will lose like 4% based on some projection or an earnings call or something, and it will drag the rest of the market down with it. The Nvidia is like 14% of the market right now. which
That's huge.
is not healthy. But that's an entirely different conversation. We have to deal with the reality. The reality is that if Nvidia rises, there's a fair chance that the stock market at least won't fall far. It just can't. Unfortunately, a lot of younger and newer traders don't realize it's not 100 stocks you're trading. It's 7 stocks and 93-ish stocks that could matter, but only if they're all moving in the same direction, which statistically speaking is very unlikely most of the time. So
I guess you could buy some Dow for kind of a bit of protection or to
yeah.
diversify a bit. Maybe that's a little enjoys it. It will participate in some of the upside or much of the upside even.
Well, as
Yeah,
I
that
get
would be.
older, I enjoy Dow more because I just these
Yeah, you like
wild
those trusty
swings.
old
Yeah,
reliable things.
right, right. I want to go
No
buy my
gadgets, just
railroad stocks.
sugar.
But
That's the
I mean,
big
there
thing,
is something to
sugar.
be said for being able to place a trade and walk away and check on it in 3 months. There's a lot to be said for that.
Very old fashioned.
Exactly.
Um, that leads me on to our next topic, which is, and this was really something I think you've probably got more to say than me. I'm not much of a crude oil guy. Don't ask why. I mean, I've never really traded it. There was a time when I wanted to be a crude oil guy. I thought, wow, look at those swings, and it looks so kind of, I don't know. I just had this crazy day. I woke up and I thought, yeah, I could trade this. I could be long, I'd be short. I'll make money every day. I had this wild, but and crude oil just I loved the way it would move. It seemed to move in quite nice, steady swings, but I've bought it sometimes when it's breaking out on the long side. I only like to buy commodities. I only like to trade commodities long. I
Yeah.
don't really like to
It
short them
makes
personally.
sense. It makes sense because it's an
As a
actual
trend
useful
trader,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but the crude oil's been in the news a bit the last few days, mainly because it's had some pretty strong gains. It's not breaking to new highs, but from what I read, as somebody who's not really very deeply into it, it's got a lot to do with the sanctions Trump just put on a couple of Russian companies. And Trump has been very down on India, which is interesting because, Modi was seen as this kind of slightly Trump-esque kind of. He thought, yeah,
Right.
Modi and Trump will get on really well. And I think they were kind of pally. And ever since Trump took office this time, you only hear bad things, between the US and India, which I thought was interesting. I didn't pay a lot of attention to it because I didn't need to. But now there's talk about India and the US finally coming to the table and doing a trade deal, and this would apparently reorient India's crude oil purchases away from Russia and into WTI oil,
Yeah.
which may be goosing the current move. What are your thoughts on that, Chris? I'm sure you've got more than that to tell me. I'm just scraping the surface, I
Well,
guess.
well, I think the idea of India moving into WTI um, in huge quantities is a nonsensical dream. Just the
Right.
logistics of it, I think, would be a problem. You're literally talking about sending crude oil from Texas, Oklahoma to Mumbai, Calcutta. That's no easy feat. It just doesn't make economic sense.
Mm,
So, I mean, now, will India buy more WTI? Probably. But we also have some other things going on in the oil markets right now that I think are the main drivers. And the biggest thing, of course, is that the United States, OPEC, and Russia are all producing massive quantities, much higher than anticipated. Now,
mm,
recently, OPEC did say that they were adding less than anticipated. Uh, that could cause a little bit of positivity. But when you look at the light sweet crude or WTI chart, $55 is huge. And it did bounce from just above there, but we have significant resistance at 60. So I think the real story will be told around $60. I'm still somewhat bearish on oil.
mm.
Um, I wouldn't really, I'm kind of like you. I don't like the idea of shorting it, but the oil markets have changed quite a bit recently, maybe over the last year or two. They're a lot choppier than they used to be. It's more of a day trading instrument.
Mm.
So like you, I don't trade it much anymore. I don't have an issue trading it, but if you take a oil chart and stretch it out maybe 5, 10 years, it likes to be in $10 ranges, sometimes $5 ranges.
Hmm.
It is very technical in that sense, but unless you're a short-term trader, that sometimes can be a little difficult to get a handle on because if you get the right announcement, EIA number or something that shocks the market, oil can move $3 in a day. And if you're in a $5 range, your risk or reward just isn't there yet, you
Yeah.
know? So I think oil is going to continue to be choppy with a bit of a ceiling. Now, I do think that we are going to see a shift next year, maybe springtime, where oil might become a little bit more valuable. And that will coincide with the US economy picking up. Right now, I suspect that's probably February-ish. But it's hard to predict where trillions of dollars are going to go 3 months out. So somewhere late winter, I expect we start to see the US really start to pick up, and that will specifically help WTI. Brent might drag a little bit, but eventually it will be pulled up by WTI. I could be wrong, full disclosure, because if we give up $55 in the WTI market, we could be talking, if memory serves me right, somewhere around $32, which would be pretty extraordinary. But for what it's worth, gas is under $3 a gallon in the US and in quite a few places right now, including where I'm at. So it's not a bad thing. It's actually good for the US economy. The real question then becomes there's this weird balance here that you have to take into account shale production
Hmm.
in the United States and Alberta. They need a certain price, and I think we're right around that price right now. So if it starts tanking, it's almost like there's a little bit of a permanent bid because some of the Permian sands and places like that, they need, I believe it's somewhere around $50. And if they don't have that, they slow production, it slows supply, and then we bounce again. So that's kind of the game we're playing. It
Right.
is not lost on me that the United States is suddenly surrounding Venezuela, which happens to have one of the largest oil reserves in the known world at the moment. There
Yeah,
has there
I
has been
heard
a
something about that.
long history of foreign companies coming in there drilling. The Venezuelans eventually nationalize things, throw the British and the Americans out. I suspect if Maduro gets overthrown within a year or two, $60 barrels of oil probably become a little bit of a pipe dream. Um, but that's long-term speculation. There's a lot of things that has to happen before there, but that is something I'm watching. And that could have a little bit to do with the bounce in the sense that, there's oil, there may be conflict there. US troops are training in Panama right now. The Navy's in the Caribbean. I mean,
You
these
know,
are not
it's funny.
coincidences.
I hadn't heard anything about that, but I suddenly saw Maduro saying, I think a couple of days ago, we have 5,000 Russian missiles, which
Yeah.
wouldn't have given me a lot of comfort if I was on his team.
Right.
Uh,
Well, and the and,
I
and
d-
the and the reality is those Russian missiles are probably Soviet missiles. So, they're probably
yeah, you
30,
wouldn't
40
want to
years
rely
old.
on those.
No,
Wouldn't
no,
rely. I
not at
mean,
all.
what they have now seem to work reasonably well for them. But yeah, I mean, what recent years have shown us is, an all-out battle with the United States is probably not something anyone is going to win, or against U.S. weaponry, against Russian or Chinese. Although to some extent the Chinese stuff is a bit untested. But before we get into too much of a dark place, let's say that something might happen. But like you say, it's somewhat down the road.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you have to keep in mind, Trump is a businessman. So
Yeah,
Maduro offered the resources of Venezuela that they could come in and do it. So there's a very real world in which nothing happens, and the United States and Venezuela come to some type of agreement where the U.S. Producers come in and start drilling in Venezuela. I That wouldn't shock me at all. That's like the dark horse nobody's thinking about.
yeah,
But Trump, I think right now, geopolitically speaking, is trying to drive China out of the Western Hemisphere. And they have a lot of influence in certain places like Venezuela. And I
yeah.
think that's part of what this
Panama.
is all about, too. Yeah, Panama. This is all
Yeah,
about natural resources and not letting the Chinese have them more than anything else, I think. Because the United States, between the United States and Alberta, we pretty much have all the oil we need.
yeah,
We're like right at production and consumption. We're back and you can buy a few barrels here and there from Saudi Arabia. Trump's friends with the royal family. I mean, that's probably nothing more than a phone call, truthfully.
yeah,
Um, it's also worth noting that the Biden administration emptied the SPR, the
yeah,
Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and we're in the process of refilling it here. And Trump is doing everything he can to drive down the price of oil. Well,
yeah.
I mean, think about it. If you're looking to buy something and you can cause the price to drop, you cause the price to drop. So we have quietly seen the SBR get a little bit attention and get filled. It's not, I don't think they're anywhere near done at this point, but that's another thing to keep in mind as well. So I think oil overall, choppy, but with a more of a downward tilt. And I'm like you, I don't like day trading commodities.
Hmm.
I don't like day trading, period. But I don't like day trading commodities. They're too volatile, especially oil. All it takes is somebody to say something or a missile to go flying in the Middle East. Next thing you know, oil's up $7 a barrel. Look at the Israeli-Iranian conflict. Oil was
Hmm.
doing nothing. And then the next thing you know,
Yeah.
it's up $12. Um,
I think that was kind of how you knew that things were going very badly for Iran.
yeah,
That the fact that oil did nothing. I think even the first couple of days,
yeah.
that was very, very, very telling. Um, Now, we should, as we're getting towards the end, unfortunately, of our podcast today, we should talk a little bit about the Forex market. I mean, we are daily Forex after all.
You're not
And you would
daily crude.
daily crude. Does it, I hadn't thought about that. That's not a bad name for a certain kind of website, but
Right.
the US dollar, it's kind of coming back, isn't it? I mean, I'm long of the dollar yen. You were telling me you've got a few long
I've got
US dollar
12.
trades.
I've
You've got
got 12.
12.
Yeah.
Okay, so
None of
you're
them are
basically
huge,
you're trading the
but
basket, basically.
yeah, 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 basically. Um, US dollar, I think this is a classic case of trade what you see, not what you hear. If you look at the euro and the British pound, they both peaked during the FOMC press conference. When we were told that there were more likely than not more cuts coming, the US dollar was going to zero. Powell didn't say that, but other people claimed that it was going to zero. It was the world's reserve currency no more. And generally speaking, when you start hearing that, the dollar starts to strengthen. Um,
Yeah.
and it's been stronger since. I've been long the dollar against the euro, the pound, the yen, the Canadian dollar, the Swiss franc, which is a little. I think I
The
need to get
commodity
out of that.
currencies are doing pretty well this
New
week, though.
Zealand dollar, yeah, New Zealand dollar. I'm still long the U.S. dollar against it, but that's starting to kind of come back against me, so I'm watching that carefully. The Australian dollar, I've been in and out of multiple times. Australia is just too tied to China right now, and
You didn't
therefore
think
they don't
about
really know what
maybe
they do.
shorting the yen? Being long
No,
the
no, I am
dollar and
long the dollar yen. I am.
oh, right, right, okay,
But I
okay.
was long before the election. So once it took off after the election, I was like, yay me. I honestly, I didn't know much about the election, but I was pleasantly surprised. So I've been long the dollar yen for about 3 months or something. So,
Very
but
true.
these are all small positions. But what traders need to keep in mind is your broker, if they pay swap after a couple months, it really adds up. And I don't want to say it's a risk-free trade, but the risk is very minor. That's what makes Forex such a beautiful
Dollar
instrument to
yen is
trade.
one of the few trades,
Yeah.
yeah, you will get some swap on, even at most retail brokers that aren't always so generous with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when it used to be that's why people took trades. That was the only reason was, oh, this one pays and this one subtracts. Well, I want to go this way. 15 years ago, Forex brokers were a lot more generous with that swap. I do miss that.
Yeah, yeah,
But
the days of the carry trade and the carry
yeah,
trade
right.
strategies.
And
Yeah.
bonds are starting to attract inflows, and that tells you that the US dollar is going to strengthen. I think what the market is trying to sniff out is that US growth. And Germany, not bad, but it is showing a few cracks here and there. So, naturally speaking, dollars go from Europe to the United States. They start to
Hmm.
leave other peripheral places. Um, there is one place I've been short the dollar, that's against the Mexican peso. And the reason for that is the interest rates differential favors the peso. So that's
Hmm.
good. But at the same time, this is an almost like an inverse cross. The Mexican economy is based almost solely on exports to the United States. The biggest exporter to the United States is Mexico. It's not China. So what happens is if the US is doing well, the dollar shrinks against the peso because money's
Hmm.
flowing into Mexico. The Mexican economy does better and you get paid. So that's kind of your backdoor way of playing the US economy because some of the other pairs you can get pretty convoluted. But with the US Mexican pair, it is almost solely based on how the US economy is doing, with the exception of when Trump started the crackdown on illegal immigration that caused some chaos. But now that the US and Mexico have come to agreements on almost everything, saying the quiet part out loud, this is the store, being Mexico, and your biggest customer is back, and they have jobs and they have money to spend at your store. So your store does well, i.e., the Mexican peso. And if you look at the Mexican peso over the last several months, it's been a grind. It normally is, but it's been a grind straight down. It's been a beautiful trend. I am to the point with that one now that I'd have to look, but I bet my swap is probably almost as much as my gains. So,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
That is for this day and era. What's the rate in Mexico? Do you know off the top of your head?
nine-ish. So,
Nine-ish? Yeah, that's
yeah, so it's
pretty
like a three
big.
and a half point spread somewhere in that neighborhood. There have been times in the past where it's been US 2.5 and Mexico 12. Um, we're not at that point yet, but if the US starts cutting those rates, should be a pretty good move.
Hmm. Maybe I should see what swap my broker's playing on a long peso short dollar.
A lot of this
I
comes
hadn't
down to the broker.
hadn't thought
So,
about that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, it's amazing. You look at 20 different brokers and they're these days they're all over the place. But
My
with
favorite
so,
is when they stop paying swap just some random day and then it comes back on. Like it makes you wonder what is going on. Like, oh, okay, well, we're not gonna have to pay a ton after all. So let's go ahead and put it back on. Um, I understand that normally is actually the liquidity
hmm,
provider that does that. It's not actually the broker, but
yeah.
yeah, a lot of games.
Yeah, like you say, the swaps in the retail forex industry are not what they used to be. Although, of course, interest rate differentials are not what they used to be. That's also
Correct.
true.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, well, I think we've got to the end of everything we wanted to talk about today, Chris.
Yes, sir.
M- Maybe I'm missing something. I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I mean, US looks pretty good. That's the
Yeah,
main story, I think, more than
yeah.
anything
Oh,
else.
I did want to add that on the US dollar, I mean, reasons to be bullish, and I am bullish. Technically, it's really formed like a pretty long-term bottom.
Yeah.
And the dollar does like to trend. It does drive the forex market as a whole. And if you're looking at the US dollar index, I would recommend checking this level 98.60, 98.6. It's held as pretty important resistance for many weeks. And I think like it's a very messy breakout, and it doesn't look like a breakout, but the price has started to spend some time trading above that level. I don't know where it is exactly now, but it was above earlier today, even though it was coming down. So yeah, I think paradoxically, even though we're in a process of rate cuts, the market is looking ahead, and there are other factors at play. So
Historically speaking, sometimes when we start getting rate cuts, the dollar actually strengthens.
yeah,
It's counterintuitive because the reason being is because a lot of times there is a concern that something deeper is going on out there. So that's part
right,
of it. But foreigners own the largest amount of US stocks they ever have on record. And all that means is somebody in Saudi Arabia is trading the real for the dollar. Somebody in Canada is trading the loonie for the dollar, and it strengthens the dollar. So there's a lot of that going on too. So we'll see, but I am still bullish the dollar. I don't think it's going to go parabolic. I just think it's going to be a
yeah,
grind.
agreed.
So, you know,
Yeah, it looks a bit grindy, but yeah, I definitely say grinding in an upwards direction.
patience is the key.
Okay.
All right.
And on that thought, it's going to be time for us to say goodbye now. Chris, it's been a pleasure having you. I look forward
Thank
to
you,
the
Adam.
next time to having you back pretty soon. That was the end of Pairs of Basis today. Please tune in and join us at Daily Forex next week for episode 3. And remember, if you liked and enjoyed our episode of Pairs of Aces, you can subscribe to Daily Forex's YouTube channel. Please add your questions for the next episode in the comments below.